Anthony Smith has a fight book against Vitor Petrino next Saturday at UFC 301. And man, this is a fight that Anthony Smith cannot afford to lose, since the dude is 1-3 in his last 4 fights. And you know that one win that I just mentioned right now? Well, that's a win that Anthony Smith barely managed to win by a split decision against Ryan Spann, which some fans argue at the time it was a robbery. And obviously Smith is in denial about his decline since he's delusional, and he even insulted Neil Magny recently, saying that he's not going to be the light heavyweight version of him, which is an insane statement to say. And I know this dude's going to be like, on paper he matches up with all these top ranked fighters. Well, I kind of disagree on that. And dude, the recent losses that Smith has faced aren't the only reason why he should retire, but there is certainly one of the main reasons why he should. But, I mean, it's no secret that the dude has been taking physical beatings and abuse he's been enduring, and it can't be overlooked. I mean, sure, he looked decent against Roundtree, but still Roundtree was landing some bombs and literally chopping the legs of Smith, and even TKO'd the dude. And yeah, Anthony Smith won that fight before when he beat Ryan Spann, but Ryan Spann is decent at best. He's not an elite fighter, and you can argue that Ryan should have won that fight. And for people that may not know this, Anthony Smith's last win before this fight was also against Ryan Spann. Like, that's probably why Smith chose this matchup with Ryan Spann again, because he was confident that he would be able to beat him again. And to Smith's credit, he did. Before that fight, he got schooled by Johnny Walker, man. And Johnny is a good fighter, but he's not an elite fighter in my opinion. He is in a slightly higher category than Ryan Spann, but in that fight, Anthony Smith got exposed for not being able to check leg kicks. You see, Anthony's lead leg is a magnet for low kicks. The worst part is that he has such a wide stance and stationary footwork. It makes it so hard for him to check him in time. Also, with a battered leg, yet he doesn't switch to southpaw, and this was ultimately the reason why he lost this fight. And before that fight, Magomed Ankalaev neutralized Anthony Smith with leg kicks and now boxed him on the feet. Anthony injured his leg as well and eventually got TKO'd, and the dude is still coping about it to this day, man. And I don't know if you guys feel like this, but every time I watch Anthony fight, he always looks so labored with his movement, high breathing, and his facial expressions. Like he's just not fit enough, but also just mentally, he really doesn't want to be there. It always strikes me as being very odd. The last time Smith was on a roll was arguably back at 2020 to 2021, where he collected 3 wins against Devin Clark, Jimmy Crute, and Ryan Spann. But Devin Clark is 2-4 in his last 6 fights, and Jimmy Crute in his last 4 fights had 3 losses and 1 draw, and Ryan Spann is the only decent fighter at best. And look, I do respect Anthony Smith for all those fights, but this has to be said. He's honestly one of those guys that's just too tough for his own good. The dude hasn't been the same fighter since he lost to Glover Teixeira. Glover literally beat the shit out of him, and that fight should have been stopped a lot earlier when it ended, but he just refused to go down and stay down. But I honestly think that he was never the same after that fight. And to be fair, there's an argument that you can say that Anthony Smith was really never that good to begin with. I mean, the last time Smith had an elite win was back at 2019 when he beat an out of prime Alexander Gustafsson. Besides that, he's always been getting smoked by Roundtree, Johnny Walker, Magomed Ankalaev, Alexander Rakic, Glover Teixeira, John Jones. And Anthony has been fighting for a long time. He has a record of 37-19, and that totals out to around 56 fights, which is just an insane amount of fights. But in 10 of those losses, Anthony Smith got TKO'd. 3 of those, he lost a unanimous decision, and the dude has 6 losses due to submissions. And that's a lot of brain trauma, I ain't gonna lie. That's a lot of CTE, and his next opponent is no slouch in Vitor Petrino. But with all that being said, does Smith beat Vitor Petrino? I would say yes. Vitor looks like a potential problem at 205. His grappling looks good, but he's a little bit mediocre on the feet, and he needs to learn how to pick up his shots more. Because I've seen this guy fight a lot, and I'm not gonna lie that he gasses a lot. He's also a bit sloppy. He gets out of tough situations with raw power alone. More skilled fighters will give him problems, and I think that's where Smith could beat him technically. Ironically, on paper, it looks like Vitor should win since his record is 11-0, and you know he's a young buck. I think he's also the favorite to beat Anthony Smith if I'm not mistaken, but I actually see Smith piecing up Vitor Petrino on the feet and winning by unanimous decision. But if that doesn't happen and somehow Anthony Smith does lose this, I'm telling you right now, he should probably leave the game of fighting. Anthony has a good niche outside of the cage with Michael Bisping, and he's sometimes on the ESPN play-by-play, so I do think he has other options. Like I said, if he does lose this, he should consider leaving the sport and doing what's best for himself and his family. With all that being said, I hope Anthony wins at UFC 301, and I hope he calls it a career soon. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with this video or not, and please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like always guys, I'll see you guys on my next one.